accomplish more, be successful, attack the day. These are the promises of what happens if you become a morning person. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that all these are true. However, I have found that waking up early actually makes me more healthy, productive, and happy because I have that extra time to do those things that make me more healthy, productive, and happy. For the rest of this video, I'm gonna give you evidence-based techniques, even some that are used by NASA, on how to become a morning person. Step 1 is to figure out your circadian rhythm. Step 2 is to shift your wake time. And step 3 is to make things easier. Let's get into it. So step 1 is to figure out your circadian clock, but we need to figure out first, what is our circadian clock? The circadian clock is an internal regulator of your wake and sleep cycle. This wake-sleep cycle has effects at the cellular level, influencing behaviors and physiology within your body. But another way to explain circadian rhythms is an individual's chronotype. And an individual's chronotype is just their preference to wake early or to wake late. And this has an influence from your environment, your sex, your physical activity, and of course your genetics. The rest of this video is going to focus on how to optimize your environment and physical activity to get into a better circadian rhythm. So first, we need to figure out what our chronotype is, right? And there are a couple of well-validated questionnaires that can help you figure out what your chronotype is. So the morningness, eveningness questionnaire, which I will link down below, is a really helpful guide that's just an online questionnaire that you can fill out, and it'll tell you, okay, are you a super morning person? Are you a somewhat morning person? Are you a super nighttime person or a somewhat nighttime person? So now we want to talk about shifting our circadian rhythm. I looked at a couple studies that used a couple different tactics to try and shift people's circadian rhythm. And what they found is that when you start to go like an hour or more shift a day, it's too much. It starts to have deleterious effects on your behavior, on your mood, and your focus. A safer and more well-tolerated way to do this is shifting by about 15 minutes per day. So if you want to shift an hour, right, you would do that over 4 days. And if you want to do 4 hours, you would do that over 16 days. And the best way I've found to do this is with the Sleep Cycle app. So I'm going to go over this app more in depth a little bit later, but for now you need to understand that sleep is broken down into 4 stages. Stage 1 is usually the lightest stage of sleep. Stage 2, you go into a deeper stage of sleep, so your body starts to get more paralyzed, your heart rate slows down, your breathing slows down. And stage 3 is your most deep stage of sleep. This is going to be the stage of sleep where it's very difficult to wake you up in, your body's really still, your heart rate is at its lowest, and also at this point you have delta waves going on throughout your brain, which are just the slowest frequency of waves throughout your sleep cycle. And then we go on to phase 4 of sleep, which is the REM cycle. I think we're probably all familiar with the REM cycle, but this is when our brain kind of wakes up. When they look at EEGs, which are just electrical activities of people's brain during REM sleep, it almost mimics normal waking day activity. And usually this is the cycle of sleep when most people dream. And throughout the night, we cycle through these 4 stages in 90-minute cycles. So we go through all 4 stages within 90 minutes. But usually as the night goes on, the time in each phase changes. So it makes sense, right, that we want to wake up in the morning at the lightest stage of sleep. We want to wake up at stage 1. And this is where the application comes in. So, you know, your phones normally have an accelerometer and some sort of microphone. And what the application will do is it'll take that input and use those inputs to generate kind of a graph of your sleep cycle. So based on your movement or based on the noise you're making, it'll say, okay, I'm pretty sure Zach is in stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4. And it'll track this throughout the night. And then what you do with the application is you set it to wake you up within a certain sleep range. So for example, I have mine set in between 5:15 and 5:45. So that means what it's doing is saying, okay, if Zach is at stage 1 at any time in this cycle, we'll wake him up. So if at 5:20 it says I'm in phase 1 of sleep, it'll wake me up, right? But if it gets to 5:45 and I'm still in a deeper stage of sleep, it'll still wake me up anyway because that's the end of the range it sets. So what we're going to do is set it at a 90-minute increment plus about 30 minutes for falling asleep time. So say you go to bed at midnight, what is the best time to set your wake time as? Well, you could set it at 6 o'clock. I wouldn't do that though because that's way too early. 7:30 or 9. And then we want to add on our like time it takes to kind of fall asleep. So if you get into bed at midnight, I would probably set the timer between 7:30 and 8. That way, you know, you're working in 90-minute increments, but you're also leaving a little bit of leeway for falling asleep. Now that we know, okay, we need to sleep for this amount of time, we need to download this sleep cycle app. We're not sponsoring this video at all, by the way. I just think it's a good app. We need to set it in 90-minute increments, and we need to leave about 30 minutes of wake or sleep time. Now we can start to actually shift our circadian rhythm, shift our wake time. But remember, we want to sleep at least around 7 hours per night. And importantly, getting the proper amount of sleep is much more important than waking up at a certain time. So now, given what I said before, we're going to start to shift our wake time by about 15 minutes every single morning. So day one, you would set your alarm between 7:15 and 7:45. And you would also want to go to bed at like 11:45 instead of midnight. Day number two, you would set that alarm between 7 and 7:30. Day number three, you'd set that alarm between 6:45 and 7:15. And day number four, you'd set that alarm between 6:30 and 7. And well done, you've shifted your circadian rhythm, your wake-sleep time. So on to step 3 of this guide is making this easier, making it actually not painful and making you sleepy and decreasing your mood or concentration. The easy part was figuring out our chronotype, setting our goals, and setting our alarms. Now it's the hard part, actually doing it. So making this easy, the first thing I want to talk about is consistency. In my head, consistency is probably the most important thing. So that means you're waking up and going to sleep the same time every single day. Of course, it's not the same when you're shifting your circadian rhythm in the beginning by 15 minutes, but 15 minutes really isn't a big deal. What is a big deal is 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours in a single night. Like, that's no bueno. So it's so important that I looked at a meta-analysis, and this is what it said. So it looked at different characteristics of sleep, including day-to-day variability or not waking up and going to bed at the same time. The researchers found a correlation between increased day-to-day variability and higher BMI, weight gain, depression symptomology, stress, and overall metabolic and health impairments. That's no good. And as a final point, the value of consistent wake and sleep times is so high that certain treatments of depression are actually based around creating a more consistent wake and sleep time, such as bright light therapy, wake therapy, and social rhythm therapy. So go to bed and wake up at consistent times. It'll make this much easier. So the second huge thing for making this earlier wake time easier for you is getting exposed to some early light. Light is one of the best ways to alter our circadian rhythm. And before I even get into the evidence, it makes sense, right? Back in the day when we were hunting and fighting and being hunted by different animals, right? It made much more sense when we could see them and go outside and hunt them. And it made much more sense for our safety when, you know, it was nighttime and the tigers or whatever, the nocturnal predators could see us to stay in the cave, to stay asleep, to stay safe. We needed that light to forage and also to see dangerous animals. So get ready for some fancy sciencey words here. It seems the suprachiasmatic nucleus in our hypothalamus is the central regulator for our circadian rhythm in mammals. And the suprachiasmatic nucleus gets direct input from the retina. And the retina is just a part of your eye that sees the world. Okay, so what do those fancy words mean? Basically, it means light hits our eye and it goes to a part of our brain that says, okay, it's daytime or it's nighttime. So what should we do about this? Well, Dr. Huberman and the CDC both recommend that we should be exposed to bright light within the first hour of waking up. And what is that bright light? Well, it shouldn't be just turning on the lights in your apartment, although that does help. Brightness or lux of the light, which is the just measurement unit of light, is much higher in the sunlight and outside than inside. And it seems within these first couple of hours of waking up, our body is especially susceptible to this light around us. And on a bright, clear day outside, the lux level can be as high as 130,000. And even if it's cloudy outside, the lux levels are still very high at about 15,000. And here's the important distinction I want to make. Indoor lighting is not very light at all compared to that. In fact, indoor lights on average were rated at about 134 lux. That's about 2 degrees of magnitude from when we're outside and when it's even super cloudy outside. So based on these data, here are some guidelines about how much light you should be exposed to and for how long. If it's bright outside with no clouds, about 5 to 10 minutes. If it's kind of cloudy outside, about 10 to 20 minutes. And if it's very overcast, about 10 to 30 minutes. Importantly also is not only this wake up light, but not having this light before we go to bed. Bright lights before bed might tell our brain, you know, it's still bright outside, it's still daytime, we should stay awake longer. So try to minimize your exposure of brighter lights at least 2 hours before bed. So those are my 2 2 most important tips for making this whole wake up earlier thing easier on yourself. Now I'm just going to run through quickly a couple of other tips that will make this easier for you. Because if I went as in depth I did on the previous things, this whole video would be like 3 hours long. But I'm going to stop and I'm just going to go through a quick bullet points of things that will make this easier. So temperature regulation is the first thing. Use a cold shower the first thing you wake up in the morning, and use a more hot or warm shower before you go to bed. There is evidence to show that people who have a warm shower within kind of 2 or 3 hours of going to bed are more likely to get to sleep more quickly. The next thing I would do is have a morning and evening routine. Classical conditioning is a very, very powerful thing. That's why when you go into bed, you should only sleep, because it'll condition your mind, you know, this is the area when I sleep. That's why also when you wake up, maybe you have the cold shower, maybe you always eat breakfast, maybe you always turn on all these lights, because that way your brain is saying, okay, when all these things happen, it's awake time. And maybe before bed, you know, you floss your teeth, you brush your teeth, you read your book or something like that, because again, and if you do this every night before bed, it'll start to signal to your brain, okay, when I do these things, it's kind of close to bedtime. Use food. If you can, eat breakfast when you first wake up. Save that coffee for about 90 minutes after you wake up, and stop eating at least 3 hours before bed. There is a strong association between having breakfast and cognition and dietary choices. Next is exercise. Exercise during the day, but stop exercising at least 5 hours before bed. And finally, avoid alcohol. Waking up earlier is hard enough. Alcohol tanks sleep quality and rest because it really hampers the REM cycle in sleep, which is one of the most important and restorative phases of sleep. So let's summarize everything we're going to do. Number 1, we're going to determine our chronotype or our circadian rhythm by taking the morningness, eveningness questionnaire and seeing what our result is. Number 2, we're going to set our new goal, wake time, and use the Sleep Cycle app to shift our wake time 15 minutes every day until we get to our goal. And number 3, we're going to make this whole process easier on ourselves, right, by having a consistent wake and sleep time, by having early light exposure, by using temperature regulation, by having morning and night routines, by eating food at certain times, by exercising during the day, and by avoiding alcohol. Now, the other thing I've done is I've finally perfected my morning routine, my morning habits to best optimize this new early wake up. There are certain techniques that I use every single day to jumpstart my circadian rhythm. For example, I always review the day ahead using my calendar and my post-it system. Now, the other thing I do is something I call the jumpstart trifecta, and there are 3 strategies, 3 things I've developed that are evidence-based techniques to kind of maximize my cognition and my awakeness and alertness when I first wake up in the morning. And I explain these 3 things and 7 other things I do every single morning to improve my alertness, cognition, and just health in general on an exclusive companion video I have on Nebula. Now, this exclusive companion video will only ever appear on Nebula and joins my other collection of exclusive videos that I only have on Nebula. So if you sign up to Nebula, you get access to those videos, of course, but now Nebula recently also changed their yearly subscription model. So when you sign up, you also get access to Nebula classes, which has my exclusive class, again, that will only ever appear on Nebula. Finally, when you sign up using my link, you get 20% off, which comes to around $3 a month. So for around $3 a month, you could see my Nebula class on Studying Smarter, Not Harder, those exclusive videos. And the other thing I forgot to mention is I publish all my YouTube videos 2 weeks early on Nebula. So you could watch next week's YouTube video right now on Nebula if you want to. So if any of that interests you, you can sign up to Nebula easily using any of my links, which I'll put down below, or go to nebula.tv/Zach Highley, and you can see all that content right now. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck on your journey to eating lots and lots of worms, and I will see you on the next one.